Hello and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be covering the events of August 5th, specifically around the Bakhmut area and the city of Donetsk, because those are the two most active areas of fighting, although there was some changes to the map that I made elsewhere. So I'll get into all of that. But first, let's start with the Donetsk area and just go over some of the events from here. So let's start off with Marinka. So yesterday I talked about how Marinka, two-thirds of it is under the Russian control, and by now most of the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Marinka, and the DPR forces in there, they're conducting combing operations to sweep up the remnants of the AFU, demine everything. So it's technically not under their control, but I can see it being fully solidified under DPR control by today or tomorrow, something like that. There's a retreat towards this area around here, like Krasnohorivka or all of these minor towns. And then, as I said before, the goal would be to sort of reach Kurakove for DPR. They could advance along this road, and since a lot of this area is open fields, and the elevation isn't that bad, they can probably get there if Ukraine doesn't send resources, especially like counter artillery and stuff like that, in time. They can actually secure a breakthrough. And before they do that, I would say that they're probably going to go for Krasnohorivka because it's another fortified town, and that might take a while. But then once those two towns are taken over, you will see the shifting of the front line westwards to here. That's what I can see happening, and we're gonna see that happening, especially just after what happened yesterday with the shelling of the center of Donetsk. I think the people in Donetsk are tired of the shelling, and the higher ups sort of realize this, and they also want to put an end to the constant shelling of Horlivka or Donetsk or all these cities around the front line, and it would be a huge morale boost for the DPR as they're also gaining ground in other areas. Now, Pisky by now, it's a similar story to Marinka. The DPR they advanced here, the Somali battalion and the all these units from DPR, they're the main force, the main contingent that is advancing, although you do have some like LPR or Russian forces. It's mainly DPR in here, which is why it probably took so long because the Russians they're obviously are top brass compared to the DPR. Not to say that the DPR isn't bad. The Somali battalion, especially, they're a very elite unit, and that's why they were able to break through here. So Pisky is basically under DPR control by now. The Ukrainians they withdrew yesterday, and they're currently around here at Pervomaiske, and we'll see if the DPR they advance towards this town or if they sort of like shift their focus towards Avdiivka. I would say they could do both, and I can see battles going on here very soon, especially because the Russians they reported that there was an assault going on around here on this minor town, Nivelske, which is really in the middle of a bunch of open fields. You see here, all of this is just open fields. So this area is getting like battered very hard right now, and since there aren't many buildings in here, if it were to be attacked, which it probably will very soon, like this, it will probably fall in like an hour or something like that. And then the other locality, which was reported to be on the chopping block for Donetsk, was Nitalove. But for them to reach this town, they'd first have to take these two. So we're going to see that happen. We're going to see fighting in those areas this week. Besides that, in Avdiivka, we have news that the Batovka mine is fully under the DPR control, which is around here. and this was also confirmed by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. I made some adjustments to the map just to show how the eastern outskirts of the of Avdiivka are under DPR control around here, and you are seeing the flanking maneuver, the pincer maneuver from the south and from the east that I was talking about before. The only thing that I haven't seen yet is the attack from the north through Krasnohorivka. We might see that soon since they are very close to the town. But yeah, it is fortified, and it is a big deal now because Ukraine, they don't really have any breathing space. They have all of their troops centered now in Avdiivka, and they have to make a choice. They're either gonna dig in or they're gonna leave because the clock is ticking for them to leave. They won't have much time before they get cut off. Um, Pitney, if that's taken, and then like all these other sparsely populated towns, then yeah, they would basically be surrounded, and you'd see something like this happen, like this sort of being cut off like this. I don't know if that'll happen just because Ukraine has a lot of forces in the area, and it would be very difficult to just surround all of them. So some of them could probably leave in small groups, like they did in Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk, but it's going to happen very soon if Ukraine doesn't really like respond with like counter battery, since we haven't really seen a lot of that recently. We saw for a while, like a month ago, Ukraine was shelling very hard. It was using a lot of shells, artillery shells, given like M777s and Caesars from the West, and for the most part, it was actually very successful at stopping the advances. And then they got the HIMARS too, and all these like rocket launchers, which were like going and destroying depots in the LPR. But as of like a recent days, we haven't really seen a lot of those HIMARS strikes. That might be because they have a shortage of them. They ran out of it because they used a lot of those HIMARS on the bridge in Kherson, which is now being repaired, and they're installing like these radar detector systems on the Dnieper River. So it might have been a mistake to use it on that bridge because they're just gonna keep on rebuilding it, and it could be used elsewhere on those depots which were being attacked originally. So I do think we will have a new push um from Congress in the United States to just like ship in more of these HIMARS to Ukraine because they were helping out. Now let's go and talk about the news around the Kadema pocket, as I call it. So we had Travneve fall. It's a very small town, so that's not too much of a surprise that it fell with that in like a day. And now we also have confirmation as of like a few hours ago that Halado Sove is under the Russian control. So I marked it as red, and that means the final town uh, on like this chain of like minor towns around Novoluhansk is Dhaka. And after Dhaka, the Russians, they're just gonna have to like go through these heights and just push towards this road over here, and then yeah, they have at least some control over this road that leads to Bakhmut. And Kharkiv, it's a very small town, so I'm not surprised that it fell. And I can see Dhaka also fall tomorrow or maybe even today. Who knows? The reason why I have the red, like the DPR control so close to these towns, and I had it like that for a while, is because the fire maps, they sort of showed that there was a lot of fires right next to the towns and not on the open fields. So I sort of assumed that it was closer than what most people were saying it was. So some sources, even some Russian sources, are saying that Zaitseve is contested still, and that the front line looks more like this, like that, and that's plausible. But um, I was just basing my assertion off of the fire maps, and I'll look back at it and see if that was the right call, and if this Zaitseve should actually still be contested, but that doesn't really matter now. What's more interesting is that now we're doing reports of fighting around like the eastern area of Kadema, which is something that I had marked for a while, but now it's being talked about more on the Russian and Ukrainian channels. And look, it's not a very big town, but yeah, the reason why it's not falling as quickly as like a Travneve, which isn't that much smaller than Kadema, is because this is sort of like the linchpin of like the epicenter of the Ukrainian resistance to the Bakhmut offensive. Because once you have this area fall and all of its heights around here taken by the Russians, there isn't much in the way of them advancing to this road, you know. And then once they reach the road and take the heights and all of that, they're really going to the gates will be open to them to reach Bakhmut, and they already have the eastern part of Bakhmut, they've already reached the eastern part of Bakhmut, and then also reaching it from the south would be a big problem. So you're going to see Ukraine stay in Kadema for as long as possible. If they leave, then that's a sign of like a collapse in their front lines. Same thing with this Zaitseve, which is also a very small town, and also Vesela Dolina. They are very small towns. There are like a dozen houses in Vesela Dolina, maybe even less. And they're not defending it for the sake of those houses. They're defending it because this is like a final point in between Opitny and these Bakhmut suburbs. And because they don't have all this artillery and they can't respond effectively to the Russian assaults, it will eventually fall, and then we'll see the Battle of Bakhmut actually begin, which it actually sort of has, because here we have news from yesterday that the Wagner militia, they actually reached this the road around here. It's called like Patras Lumumba Road or something like that. I don't know why it's called that, because that guy was like the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, so it's sort of random. But anyway, they took control of this junction around here, in between some other roads, and the fighting is just like reaching these eastern blocks around here. And I don't know if this was sort of like a diversion, because we were all expecting like a further advance to Solidar by now. So maybe it's sort of like a trick, because a lot of forces were concentrated in Solidar, and then out of nowhere you have the Wagner group like reaching around here. Maybe it's some sort of like diversionary tactic to spread out the Ukrainian forces. That would be a plausible um, scenario. Another thing is that, as I was saying about Solidar, it's not really like we're not seeing any progress around here as of yesterday. So that probably shows that there's some diversion of troops, like from the Wagner group and from DPR Russian forces being moved towards the eastern outskirts of Bakhmut, and maybe that would sort of force Ukraine to divert troops from Solidar as well, because we still have fighting in the Knauf factory place around here. Also, we have fighting in the quarry area, which is like right here. The gas station is under the control of the Allied forces of Russia, DPR, all of that. But besides that, most of it is still under the Ukrainian control. And the Ukrainian sources, they say that they killed like 100 Russian soldiers in the fighting over the past few days. And yeah, the Russians, they say they killed like 200. That's what I was saying yesterday. But yeah, you could see why there would be such huge casualties. It is sort of like this more urban type settlement, and the Russians, they apparently, at least according to the Ukrainians, they had some of their Chechens captured by the Ukrainian forces. Some reports were saying like 30 Russian POWs, 50, something like that. I don't know if that's true, but it's possible that Russia did actually advance around here and that they took parts of the city like around here and they actually got pushed back. I don't know if that's true. I'm just sort of basing that off of what is being reported by the Ukrainians, but yeah, there was no evidence of that. So just take that with a grain of salt. Now, besides everything going on the front lines around the Donbass region, I also made some updates to the front line around the Kharkiv area. So there's been like barely any fighting around this part of the front line for a while, but as of recently, we've actually seen that Russia crossed the river around here, crossed into Bayrak, Novosibirsk, Shucherivka, and they I think they sent like reconnaissance units first, and then they just solidified control. And now there's reporting, even the Ukrainians confirmed this, that there was fighting in Husarivka. I don't think they've taken control yet, but the Ukrainians, they don't have many forces here, and if there was actually a concerted Russian effort to take this area, then it would be a disaster for Ukraine because they have like Zalaman fortified, Chepel. Those are the two major Ukrainian formations in this area. So you could see them take Husarivka and then they like advance here to Proto Popivka, and then this would first of all isolate the Ukrainian forces around here that are hiding in the forest so they can't really be attacked by the Russians and the artillery and aviation and all of that. And then it would also help finally relieve pressure from Izium because there's been a lot of talk about an offensive towards Izium. There was actually Ukrainian units crossing the river through the forest, and they eventually got pushed back, but it is Izium isn't that far away from the Ukrainian lines. They just have to cross the river in the forest, and they might actually be able to reach it. So that's a big problem for Russia because Izium is a very important city. It is a supply junction. It's very important for the logistics. So relieving pressure from Izium by taking these towns around here along this road would be very essential for the Russians, and we might see that happen, especially because Ukraine is stretched out with like trying to take over like Kherson, but they might have already given up on that by now. So we'll have to see. That's it for now, and I'll see you later.